Hello, I decided to do my presentation on James Madison. James Madison was born March 16th, 1751 in Port Conway, Virginia. Madison grew up in Orange County, Virginia. He was the oldest of 12 children, and I believe only 6 of them actually ended up living to adulthood. His father, James, was a successful planter and owned more than 3,000 acres of land and dozens of slaves. His father was also an influential figure in county affairs. His mother, Nellie Conway Madison, was born at Port Conway and was the daughter of a prominent planter and tobacco merchant. In 1762, Madison was sent to a boarding school run by Donald Robertson in King and Queen County, Virginia. He returned 5 years later after, being sent there. His father had him stay home and receive private tutoring because he was concerned about Madison's health, and Madison was kind of a sickly child. In 1769, 2 years later, after returning to his home, he enrolled at the College of New Jersey, which is now known as Princeton University. There, Madison studied Latin, Greek, science, and philosophy, and other subjects. There was a great emphasis on speech and debate. Madison helped found the American Whig Society because he was, in competition with a fellow student, Aaron Burr, who started another type of society. In 1771, Madison graduated, and then in 1772, he returned back to Virginia. When Madison returned to Virginia, there was tension between the British authorities and the colonists because of British taxation. Madison was appointed as a colonel after he joined the Virginia militia. In the previous year of 1774, he was elected to the Orange County Committee of Safety. Madison was more useful as a writer and not a fighter in the American Revolutionary War, which began in 1775. Then in 1776, Madison's talents were very useful at the Virginia Convention. He went as Orange County's representative to the convention. In this time period, Madison struck up a friendship with Thomas Jefferson, which, ended up being a lifetime friendship. After Madison was put on a committee to write Virginia's Constitution. Madison, made some special contributions of rewording the Constitution about religious freedoms, which was something he really believed strongly in. In 1777, Madison lost his bid for a seat in the Virginia Assembly, but was later appointed to the Governor's Council. He was a strong supporter of the American-French alliance during the Revolution and handled much of the council's correspondence with France. The country faced a difficult war against Great Britain, as well as a runaway inflation, financial troubles, and lack of cooperation between the different levels of government. Madison worked to make himself an expert on financial issues, becoming a legislative workhorse and a master of parliamentary coalition building. In 1780, he went to Philadelphia to serve as one of Virginia's delegates to the Continental Congress, which we all know was something very important that was happening in history. He left Congress in 1783 to return to Virginia Assembly and work on religious freedom statutes. Like I said before, was something he really believed in, and he thought that was something that everyone had a right to since birth. Soon after that, though, he returned back to Congress to help create a new constitution. Madison, after undertaking, a really good study of other world's governments, came to the conclusion that American government should have 3 branches. The one we have now. 3 branches. He felt that because of this way that government was set up, there should be checks and balances to keep the other branches, from having too much power and keeping power where it should be. In 1787, Madison represented Virginia at the Constitution Convention. Madison was a Federalist and campaigned for a strong central government. In the Virginia Plan, he expressed his ideas about forming, the three-part government, which I just talked about. Madison took detailed notes during the debates at the convention, which helped to further shape the U.S. Constitution and led to his moniker Father of the Constitution. Madison stated the Constitution was not the offspring of a single brain, but instead the work of many heads and many hands. Madison joined Alexander Hamilton and John Jay in a special effort to get the Constitution ratified, and the three men wrote a series of persuasive letters that were published in New York newspapers known as the Federalist Papers. In 1789, Madison won a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. He became an instrumental force behind the Bill of Rights, submitting his suggested amendments to the Constitution to Congress in June of 1789. In Congress, Madison and Jefferson soon found themselves disagreeing with the Federalists on key issues. One thing they disagreed on was the states' rights, and that there shouldn't be a national bank, which was something proposed by Alexander Hamilton. In 1792, Jefferson and Madison founded the Democratic-Republican Party. Jefferson, Madison, and James Monroe were the only Democratic representatives ever to become U.S. presidents, as the party divided into competing fractions in the 1820s. Another exciting thing that happened in Madison's life in 1794, at age 46, Madison married a 26-year-old widow named Dolly Payne. Dolly had one son who was also named Payne. The son was from her previous marriage. Dolly was basically the complete opposite of Madison. She was very outgoing. She was a Quaker, and Madison was kind of quiet, shy. But the couple were married for 41 years, and it was said that they were hardly ever apart. And then in 1801, Madison served as President Jefferson's Secretary of State. He supported Jefferson's efforts in expanding the nation's border with the Louisiana Purchase and the exploration of new lands. And then, again at this time, Great Britain and France were at war, and American vessels were caught in the middle. So after diplomatic efforts failed, Madison campaigned for the Embargo Act of 1807, which would prohibit American vessels from traveling to foreign ports and halted exports from the United States. The Embargo Act of 1807 wasn't exactly popular. It didn't gain a lot of favor with people. In 1808, Madison won the presidential election. He defeated Federalist Charles Pinckney and independent Republican George Clinton. He secured nearly 70% of the electoral votes. One of the biggest challenges Madison faced was the rising tension between the U.S. and Great Britain. Like I said, the Embargo Act wasn't favorable, so it was repealed in 1809, and a new act reduced the trade embargo down to two countries, Great Britain and France. This new law, known as the Non-Intercourse Act, did nothing to improve the situation. American merchants didn't listen to the act, and they disregarded it. And because of this, American ships and crews were still preyed upon in foreign waters. And then in 1812, Madison issued a war proclamation against Britain. But America was not ready for a war, and neither was Congress, because they hadn't funded the army properly, and they didn't really have an army to fight back. Because of this, the war was referred to as Mr. Madison's War, and like I said, it wasn't favorable, and a lot of people were very unhappy about it. But somehow, when Madison ran for re-election, he once again won and beat Federalist candidate DeWitt Clinton The war continued at this time, and although Madison was criticized for difficulties resulting from the war, he still won the re-election. Madison was actually forced to flee Washington, D.C. in August 1814 because British troops invaded. They burned buildings, including the White House, the Capitol, and the Library of Congress. The Treaty of Ghent was signed in December 1814 in Europe to end the war, but before that news reached America, there was a major victory at the Battle of New Orleans on December 18th. That lasted till January 1815. This victory did help put some positive spin towards the controversial war. Let's see. Madison served 2 terms in office, and even though the war was seen as controversial, Madison was still looked at as a great thinker, communicator, and statesman. Madison retired back to his family's land at Montclair with his wife and her son. And let's see. Like I said, he retired to his estate. That's all that I have. So, also he died at age 85 on June 28th, 1836. Thank you for listening, and this has been a pleasure to